Thanks, Cathaoirleach. Minister, as you know, students right across the country today are devastated by the decision that you and the government made to ignore their wishes, to ignore the advice of the Children's Ombudsman, and to push ahead with a so-called traditional leaving cert, despite the fact that their experience has been anything but traditional. Why, Minister? Why not take the opportunity to abolish the rat race of the CAO points, of the leaving cert and all the rest, and embrace an open access system?
Thank you very much, Deputy, and thank you for the question. I think, to be very clear, Deputy, I, as I'm sure yourself, have watched, for example, much of the discussion this evening, even on the 6-1 News, and I think it's fair to say that students in the main have asked for clarity. They've asked for clarity as regards Leaving Cert 2022. They have acknowledged that they have received that. They've also asked for 4 things, actually, when I met with the students. The second thing being that there would be additional changes made to the exam papers. We have provided for that. They also raised the issue of grade inflation in terms of the class of 2022 competing with the class of 2021, and we have addressed that issue for them. And indeed, they did raise the issue of accredited grades. And again, I have explained in relation to the issue of accredited grades, we're not in a position to offer accredited grades this year, as we'd offered in previous years, as we have 1 in 4 students who do not have the data in relation to a junior cycle. And that is important, that data, because it is the manner in which we have used to provide comparability or standardisation for students. I think it is fair to say, Deputy, that the reaction of students today has been, there are various views on this, various views of parents, various views of everybody around the table, and I have met with all of those around the table, whether it is parents or students or teaching unions or whether it is the management bodies. I've met with all of them, and I have listened and I have heard what they have had to say, and specifically in relation to the 4 points that were raised by the students, I have gone as far as I possibly can to ensure that they are presented with what they have asked me to do for them. 3 of the asks I have absolutely been in a position to deliver for them, and the 4th one, for reasons as I have already outlined in terms of an absence of data, we're not in a position to provide for accredited grades this year in a similar fashion to last year. And I think if you heard the news this evening, you would recognise that many of the students have accepted that absence of data.
I know about Minister, and the important thing is that I think the students won't buy it. They won't buy the idea that you listened and you did everything that was possible and the government did everything that it was possible. 67% of students in a very widely shared and participated in survey by the Students' Union said they did not want a traditional leaving cert. And the government is pushing ahead with a traditional leaving cert with a couple of tinkering changes around the edges. That's all it is, cold comfort to the students. We know that even in a normal non-COVID year, 57% of students report suffering mental or physical illness due to the stress. Add in this year the experience of COVID, the fear of getting COVID, the fear of getting exams, and it is horrendous, unnecessary pressure. And I'll make the point again, it is not necessary. It's an artificial shortage. Why not put the investment in to ensure there's a third place position for anyone who wants to avail of it?
Thank you, Deputy. Just in relation to this concept that you have of us ploughing on, I think far from it. I think if you were to take time to study what has been put in place in terms of these exams for June, it is very clear that these exams in June are very, very different and significantly different to what has been offered in previous times. So, for example, if students are studying maths, where they would traditionally have 10 questions to answer, there's such significant choice now that they only have 6 to answer on paper 1 and paper 2. Higher level English on paper 2, where there are 3 very significant significant bodies of study. Rather than answering 3, they answer 2. And those changes are in, across all sections, whether it would be the orals, for example, in the Spanish oral, where they would have 5 role plays to prepare for, they now only have to prepare for 3. And likewise, in Irish, when they would have 20 Shra Picture, they now have 10. So these significant changes are across the system, and it is an acknowledgement for what the students actually asked for, that there would be additional changes put to the papers, and that has been achieved. And equally so, they raised the question of grade inflation, and a commitment has been given that the grade inflation for 2022 would be on a par with 2021. And in terms of the accredited grades, I want to be very clear, and I haven't heard you propose any alternative here. In terms of the accredited grades, we have said that there is an absence of data, so that it cannot be as fair as the system that we were in a position to operate last year.
Thanks. So the Minister says this is very, very different. The Minister says that there's significant changes. It speaks to a profound lack of vision by the government, where the basics of the system is exactly the same. If you're a student, your perception in terms of how you're going to do in your Leaving Cert, it all rests on the one exam in terms of maths, or the 2 exams in terms of maths, or in English, or in Irish, and the oral and the oral. There's tinkering around the edges about exactly what's happening in those exams, but that's it. All the pressure built up onto those couple of weeks of exam at an end of 18 years almost of education experience for people. And the alternative is really, really clear. It's to open access to third-level education. Is to put the investment in, to use the temporary, short-time, part-time staff that already exist in our third-level institutions, to add the extra 25,000 places that we need to have to say we have open access to third-level education, just as we currently have open access to second-level education, and do away with this unnecessary rat race.
And Minister, to conclude on this question.
Thank you. Deputy, just to be very clear in relation to the question of access to higher education, that is a policy matter which is not under my remit. It is under the remit of my colleague, the Minister for Further and Higher Education, Research, Innovation and Science. And I am aware that it is a key objective of the Department of Further and Higher Education to ensure that there is access into either further or higher education for each person who wishes to pursue educational options at third level. And in regard, as I said, once again, to Leaving Certificate, what has been offered this year, and again I have not heard you in any shape or form reference how you would propose to offer the accredited grade system, given that, and I'm just making the point.
Open access.
You have said, okay, right, very clearly, that we have not answered the needs of students. And I am saying to you that we specifically went through each of the issues that were raised by students, 4 in particular that were raised by students, asking for clarity, greater choice, to address the issue of grade inflation and accredited grades. 3 out of those 4 we were able to address for them, and the 4th one, because of an absence of data, we were not. But we have given sufficient and significant questioning and changes on the paper to accommodate the students going forward.
Thank you, Minister.